Most horror movies just want to scare you by killing you. Cosmic horror movies want to convince you that you were never alive to begin with. And these different movies will make you question everything you thought you knew about being human. Because these are the scariest depictions of cosmic horror in some of the best horror movies out there. So you want to know what real cosmic horror looks like? Let's start with the movie that made audiences so uncomfortable they literally chose a cute alien over it. John Carpenter's The Thing came out the same weekend as E.T. And guess which one people picked? Apparently, America in 1982 was not ready for a movie about an alien that doesn't want to phone home. It wants to wear your skin. Here's what makes The Thing so damn scary. It is not the monster. Sure, Rob Bottin's practical effects are disgusting enough to make you never want to eat spaghetti again, but that's not the real horror. The real horror is sitting in a room with your coworkers and knowing that any one of them could be a perfect copy of themselves, and you would never know until it was too late. The movie dumps a group of people in Antarctica with one simple rule: don't trust anyone, not your best friend, not your boss, not even yourself or the dog. Because this alien doesn't just kill you, it studies you, copies you, and then pretends to be you so well that even your mom would invite it over for Christmas dinner. What's brilliant about this movie's idea is how the paranoia builds. These people start out as a team, but by the end they're pointing flamethrowers at each other over who gets to make dinner. The alien barely has to do anything. It just sits back and watches humans destroy each other with suspicion. Reminds me of Among Us. In the ending, two guys sitting in the snow, both convinced the other one might be the monster. No resolution, no happy ending, just pure cosmic dread. The universe doesn't care if you figure out who the real person is. You're probably going to freeze to death either way. Critics actually hated this movie when it first came out. Audiences walked out of theaters, but now it's considered a masterpiece. Honestly, I found it so cool that they actually made a movie based off Among Us. That is probably the coolest thing I can ever think of. Among Us is my favorite game ever, and they actually made a movie based on Among Us. That is so cool. But at least those people knew something was wrong in The Thing. The scientists in Annihilation don't get that luxury. They walk into something called the Shimmer, thinking they're going to study it, and instead it starts studying them. Which would be fine, except this thing studies you the way a kid studies bugs, by pulling off your wings to see what happens. The Shimmer is cosmic horror for people who think they're too smart for cosmic horror. It's this beautiful rainbow-colored zone that makes everything inside it wrong. Not evil, just wrong. Plants grow with human DNA. Animals develop human vocal cords. And humans? Well, humans start becoming something that was never supposed to exist. There's this one scene with a bear that has become legendary for being absolutely terrifying. This bear kills one of the team members and somehow absorbs her dying screams. So later, when this skeletal nightmare comes prowling through the darkness, it opens its mouth and a human woman starts screaming for help from inside it. Just thinking about that makes you want to check behind your couch right now, doesn't it? But here's the thing about Annihilation that makes it proper cosmic horror. The alien force isn't trying to hurt anyone. It's just doing what it does, which happens to be turning everything it touches into beautiful, impossible monsters. The beauty of cosmic horror is that it's often not malicious. We just don't understand its true intentions. One character figures this out and says, "I don't think it wants anything." And honestly, that is way scarier than if it wanted to destroy us. At least destruction has a purpose. The movie ends with the main character making it out, but she's been changed. How much? Well, that's the question that'll keep you awake tonight. Because if something can copy you perfectly, how would you ever know if you're still you? And that sounds like a personal hell. But now, let's talk about literal hell. Event Horizon is what happens when someone asks, what if we made a haunted house movie, but the house is a spaceship that went to hell? Now that sounds like a really bad idea for a movie that would likely not do very well, but then they made the movie and it's an amazing movie. The ship Event Horizon disappears during a test flight of some new engine. Then it shows up 7 years later near Neptune with no crew and a lot of blood on the walls. So naturally they send Lawrence Fishburne and his rescue team to check it out, because that always ends well. The ship's creator, Dr. Weir, explains that his gravity drive works by folding space. Punch a hole through dimensions, travel instantly anywhere. Sounds great on paper. In practice, the ship punched through to a dimension where physics work differently, and everything wants to torture you forever. The rescue team finds video logs of the original crew doing things to each other that were so disturbing, the movie had to cut most of it just to avoid an adults-only rating. Dr. Weir starts the movie as a helpful scientist and ends it as a demon with his eyes gouged out, telling everyone where we're going We don't need eyes to see. Which is not something you want to hear from your flight captain. What makes Event Horizon terrifying is how matter-of-fact it is about the whole hell dimension thing. The ship doesn't encounter aliens or monsters. It found a place where suffering is the only constant and brought some of that energy back home. The crew starts seeing their worst memories and deepest guilts come to life. They have personal hells tailored just for them. The movie basically says the scariest thing about space travel isn't running out of oxygen or hitting an asteroid. It's the chance that you might accidentally discover that hell is real, and it's bigger than our universe, and it noticed that you're looking. But at least that crew knew they were in danger pretty quickly, unlike the people in The Empty Man. The Empty Man starts as a standard urban legend movie and slowly reveals itself as something much weirder. James Badge Dale plays an ex-cop looking for a missing teenager who supposedly summoned something called the Empty Man. You know, blow into a bottle on a bridge, chant his name, wait 3 days for him to show up and kill you. Standard creepypasta stuff. How many of us tried Bloody Mary when we were kids? I did. I thought it would finally help me get a girlfriend. Cause like maybe, I don't know, maybe she was like a girl and anyway, yeah, okay, except this movie runs for over 2 hours, which should have been your first clue that something strange was happening. Most urban legend movies wrap up in 90 minutes, but this one takes its time because it has bigger plans for you, just like the universe. The investigation leads to a cult called the Pontifex Institute, and this is where things get properly cosmic. These aren't your regular devil worshippers. They're into something called tulpas, which are ideas that become real if enough people believe in them. Think like Santa Claus or the Queen of England. But instead of bringing like presents, they bring existential dread and they murder teenagers. The cult has been working for decades to create the perfect vessel for their empty man entity. They need someone with the right psychological profile, the right memories, and the right motivations. Someone who would naturally stumble into their trap and do exactly what they want him to do. The twist is that James Badge Dale's character isn't investigating the cult. He is the cult's project. His memories, his past as a cop, even his investigation into the missing girl, all of it was planted by the cult to create the perfect host for the cosmic entity. The person you've been following for 2 hours might not even be a real person at all. Unfortunately, this movie flopped harder than a fish on dry land when it first came out, but it's become a cult favorite among people who enjoy having their reality questioned. By the end, you're not sure what was real, what was fake, or whether the difference matters anymore. Honestly, this is one of my favorite horror movies, and literally one of my entire purposes of having this channel is to give light to some of the best horror movies out there that nobody watches, because I have scoured the deepest, darkest corners of Reddit. Do not do that. You don't want to know what's down there. Just to find some horror movies, and I want to tell everyone about them because they're amazing. They deserve to be seen. This is one of those movies. Go watch it if you haven't. But now let's get back to where all this started, in space. Ridley Scott's Alien is the movie that taught Hollywood how to make cosmic horror work for mainstream audiences. The screenwriter, Dan O'Brien, straight up called it the best Lovecraftian movie ever made without being a Lovecraft adaptation, which is a pretty bold claim, but then you watch it and think, yeah, he's probably right. The setup sounds simple enough. Space truckers get a distress signal, land on a planet, and one guy gets a facehugger attached to his head. Then they bring him back to the ship. Standard rescue mission gone wrong type stuff. Then John Hurt's chest explodes during dinner, and suddenly everyone realizes they're not dealing with a regular monster movie. What makes this pure cosmic horror is how small and helpless the humans are. The xenomorph doesn't want to rule the world or send a message or to even prove a point. It just wants to survive and make more of itself. The crew might as well be dealing with a natural disaster that happens to have teeth. H.R. Geiger designed the alien to look wrong on purpose. It has no eyes. It has all biomechanical parts and a life cycle that involves using you as an incubator whether you want to help out or not. It's not evil. Evil would be easier to understand. It's just completely indifferent to human life, which is way more terrifying. The movie actually went on to win an Oscar for its visual effects, and rightfully so. But the real genius is in what you don't see. Most of the alien screen time happens in shadows and quick glimpses. Your brain fills in the details, and your brain is much better at scaring you than any special effects team is. By the end, Ripley is the only one left, and she's not a hero who saved the day. She's just a survivor who got lucky. The alien doesn't get defeated by human ingenuity or teamwork. It gets sucked into space, which is basically a death by technicality. But what if the cosmic horror came from something beautiful? All right, everyone watching, buckle up. This is one of my favorite cosmic horror movies, so you better listen. And it stars Nicolas Cage. So you've already got like the hottest actor out there. It's gonna be a good movie. Just hold up. Nicolas Cage stars in The Color Out of Space, which is exactly what it sounds like. A movie about a color from space that ruins everything it touches. It's based on an H.P. Lovecraft story, and this film finally gives us a faithful adaptation that doesn't chicken out when things start to get weird. The Gardner family lives on a quiet farm until a meteorite crashes in their backyard and starts leaking this magenta glow everywhere. At first, it seems kind of pretty. The plants grow bigger, the fruits taste sweeter, and everything looks more vibrant. But then the family dog starts eating the cat. Then mom and the youngest son get fused together into a screaming flesh pile, and Nicolas Cage loses his mind completely. The movie is not subtle about its horror. When things start going wrong, they go really, really wrong. We're talking body horror that makes you wish you hadn't eaten lunch before watching. The color doesn't just kill you. It turns you into something that shouldn't exist while you're still aware enough to know what's happening. Cage gives one of his most unhinged performances, which is saying something. He starts as a normal dad trying to keep his family safe and ends up cackling like a maniac while his reality falls apart around him. The man screams at his own reflection and somehow makes it feel completely reasonable given the circumstances. What's brilliant about this cosmic horror is how the threat works. The color isn't malicious. It's just doing what colors from space do, which happens to be incompatible with life on Earth. It's beautiful and deadly in equal measure. You can't negotiate with it. You can't understand it. You can't even properly see it since it exists outside our normal color spectrum. The movie ends with most of the family dead or transformed. The farm turned into a wasteland and the color heading off to corrupt somewhere else, which is the standard cosmic horror ending. The universe doesn't care about your little story. It just moves on to the next thing. But sometimes horror hides in plain sight. Black Mountainside proves you don't need a big budget to make people question their sanity. This Canadian indie film follows archaeologists who dig up something in the frozen wilderness that probably should have stayed buried. The whole thing costs less than most Hollywood catering budgets, yet manages to be more unsettling than movies with $100 million price tags. A research team uncovers a structure that's way older than it should be. We're talking pre-human civilization stuff, which immediately raises some uncomfortable questions about who built it and where they went. The team gets excited because this could rewrite history. Unfortunate for them, history doesn't want to be rewritten. Communication goes down. Supplies run low, and team members start getting sick and acting weird. Then people begin seeing an elk-headed figure in the woods who likes to have long conversations about how humans are pretty much worthless. This creature doesn't jump out and attack anyone. It just shows up to chat about the futility of existence, which is somehow even more disturbing. The film takes its time building dread. There are no sudden scares or loud music stings, just men slowly losing their minds in a place where nobody can help them. They start turning on each other, making increasingly bad decisions, and generally falling apart in the most realistic way possible. One guy cuts off his own arm for reasons that make sense to him at the time. Another walks into the forest and disappears. The remaining team members stop trusting each other and begin planning violence, all while that elk-headed thing watches from the tree line, probably taking notes. By the finale, you're not sure if the creature caused their breakdown or if isolation and stress did all the work. Either way, everyone ends up dead in the snow while something ancient and patient continues waiting in the woods. But then again, maybe living in reality was the problem all along. Maybe we just need to succumb to the madness. John Carpenter made In the Mouth of Madness is a love letter to H.P. Lovecraft. Like if we're on Tinder or something, John Carpenter was literally sliding in H.P. Lovecraft's DMs. It was trying to like Lovecraft the shit out of him, if you catch what I mean. The film asks a simple question. What if a horror writer's stories were so good they started coming true? Then it spends 90 minutes making you wish you'd never thought about that possibility. Sam Neill, the dinosaur man, plays an insurance investigator hunting for missing author Sutter Kane. If you can't tell, it seems like Sam Neill is kind of a fan of cosmic horror. He's in a lot of the big movies. Anyways, Sutter Kane's books are driving readers completely insane. It's almost as bad as smut is making people in 2025, though nothing can compare to that. Society is doomed. Anyways, publishers are getting worried because Kane's fans are getting violent and unpredictable after finishing his latest novel. The search leads Neil to a town called Hobbs End, which is supposed to be fictional, but turns out to be depressingly real. The locals have been reading Kane's work for years, and it's changed them in ways that violate several laws of physics. People walk through walls, children age backwards, and the hotel check-in process involves tentacles, and not in a fun way. Neil discovers that Kane isn't just writing horror stories. He's documenting the return of ancient creatures who want to reclaim Earth. The books serve as instruction manuals for summoning old gods, disguised as entertainment for people who think they're just reading scary stories before bed. The movie's most twisted joke happens at the end. Neil escapes the nightmare town and reports back to his employers, only to discover that his entire investigation has been turned into a Hollywood movie. He sits in an empty theater watching actors play out the events he just lived through, laughing hysterically because he finally gets the cosmic joke. The film suggests that maybe you're not watching a YouTube video right now. Maybe you're just a character in someone else's story, and the author is getting ready to write something unpleasant for you. Yeah, sleep tight after that one. Anyways, other forms of cosmic horror just want to trap you with monsters. Stephen King's The Mist traps you with your family and your neighbors. Those are the real monsters after all. Anyways, you get trapped with monsters. A mysterious fog rolls into a small Maine town, and everyone takes shelter in the local supermarket. It seems reasonable enough until tentacles start grabbing people from the loading dock, and everyone realizes they're not just dealing with bad weather. The creatures in the mist are properly weird. Giant spiders that lay eggs in people, pterodactyl things that sound like air raid sirens, tentacles the size of subway cars. But honestly, the real monsters are the people stuck inside the store with you. Marcia Gay Harden plays Mrs. Carmody, a religious zealot who decides this is obviously the apocalypse and God wants blood sacrifices. Specifically, she wants to sacrifice the people who don't agree with her theology. Let's play a game show of how well worked out last time in history. Let's go spin the wheel. Never. Which starts as a monster siege movie, turns into a study of how fast normal people can become completely unhinged when they're scared. Mrs. Carmody gains followers by promising that killing the right person will make the monsters go away. People actually start believing her because the alternative is accepting that they're trapped with no way out. Thomas Jane plays the dad trying to keep his son safe while adults around him lose their minds. The military might be coming to help, or they might be the ones who caused this mess in the first place. Nobody knows. Nobody knows anything for certain, which makes everyone more desperate and dangerous. Then we get to the ending, which Stephen King himself said was better than what he wrote. Jane and a few survivors run out of gas in the middle of nowhere. Giant creatures are walking around outside their car, each one bigger than a skyscraper. Jane has a gun with 4 bullets and 5 people in the car, including his young son. He makes a choice that will haunt you for weeks. Then literally minutes later, the military shows up with the all clear signals. The cosmic joke isn't just that the universe is indifferent, it's that it is a sick sense of humor. But what if you could see the monsters all along? From Beyond comes from Stuart Gordon, who's going to be in this video a couple times. But anyways, for this movie, he's working with another Lovecraft story about a machine called the Resonator that lets people see into other dimensions. Spoiler alert, the dimensions are full of things that want to eat your brain. Jeffrey Combs plays Crawford, a scientist whose boss, Dr. Pretorius, built this machine to stimulate the pineal gland. You know, that little part of your brain that some people think is your third eye. Turns out when you stimulate it enough, you can see creatures that are always around you, but normally invisible. The good news is you can finally see them. Bad news is now they can see you too. Dr. Pretorius gets his head bitten off in the opening scene, but death doesn't stop him from being the worst boss ever. He keeps coming back throughout the movie, each time more mutated and gross than before. First he's just missing a head, then he's a blob of flesh with multiple faces. By the end he's turned into something that looks like a nightmare designed by a committee of kindergartners. The Resonator doesn't just let you see monsters, it starts changing you too. Crawford's pineal gland grows into this worm thing that pops out of his forehead whenever the machine turns on. Barbara Crampton plays the psychiatrist who gets obsessed with the machine's effects, starts using it recreationally, which is probably not what her medical license covers if you're asking me. What makes this cosmic horror work is how the machine reveals that reality has been lying to you your whole life. All these creatures have been floating around your living room, your bedroom, and your kitchen. You just couldn't see them before. The Resonator doesn't create monsters. It shows you that you've been surrounded by them all along. The movie ends with most of the cast dead or transformed and the Resonator destroyed. But you're left wondering how many other invisible things are out there waiting for someone to build another machine. But now let's talk about one of the more modern cosmic horror hits, and one of my favorite movies, The Void. The Void is what happens when horror fans get tired of CGI monsters, decide to make their own movie with actual latex and fake blood. This Canadian indie film brings back practical effects in a big way, creating creatures so disgusting, you'll wonder why anyone thought computer graphics were an improvement. Deputy Daniel Carter finds a blood-soaked guy on the side of the road and takes him to the nearest hospital. Bad choice. The hospital is nearly empty, the phones don't work, and mysterious robed figures have surrounded the building. Also, the staff keeps transforming into tentacle monsters, and not the fun kind, which they probably should have mentioned before they got to the hospital. What starts as a simple siege movie quickly becomes something much weirder. There's a doctor in the basement trying to open a portal to another dimension because he thinks death is just a design flaw that needs fixing. The results of his experiments are shambling around the hospital, and they all look like someone fed a bunch of medical textbooks into a blender. The creatures in this movie are genuinely creative. We're talking about things that used to be human, but now resemble abstract art projects made from your organs. One monster is basically a walking pile of flesh with a skull stuck in it, screaming constantly because existence hurts. Yeah, welcome to 2025, we're all dealing with it. Man up, monster. We all go through it every day. Another looks like someone tried to build a person from memory and got most of the details wrong, and they were also high on crack. The film doesn't explain much about what's happening or why. The cosmic horror comes from watching normal people try to survive in a place where the rules of biology have stopped working. The doctor claims he's trying to help humanity transcend death, but his version of transcendence looks suspiciously like being turned into the deli aisle. By the finale, reality has completely broken down inside the hospital. Characters walk through doorways and end up in alien landscapes. The building itself becomes a maze of impossible geometry where the basement leads to cosmic voids filled with ancient pyramids and tentacled gods. Once again, not the fun kind. At least that was obviously supernatural from the start though, because Prince of Darkness takes the most recognizable villain in human history and makes him a cosmic horror problem. John Carpenter's film suggests that Satan isn't a fallen angel. He's an alien force from an antimatter universe, and the Catholic Church has been keeping this secret for centuries. A group of physics students and professors get called to investigate a mysterious cylinder of green liquid in the basement of an abandoned Los Angeles church. The container holds the concentrated essence of the devil. Yes, it's a big barrel of the devil's goo. Do with that what you will. Anyways, it's been waiting for the right cosmic alignment to wake up and start the apocalypse, which is probably not what these grad students expected when they signed up for an extra credit. As the liquid starts to activate, team members get possessed one by one. The possessed don't become cackling demons. They become something worse. They stand perfectly still, sometimes for hours, whispering backwards messages in dead languages. When they do move, it's with this eerie coordination that suggests they're all part of the same terrible intelligence. The scariest part of Prince of Darkness isn't the possession scenes or the gore. It's the dream sequences that all the characters start having. They receive what appears to be a broadcast from 1999. Grainy video footage showing a dark figure emerging from the church, with a voice warning that this is not a dream. These dreams feel like messages from the future, desperately trying to prevent what's about to happen. Carpenter films these dream sequences on actual VHS and then films the playback, creating this haunting, degraded quality that makes them feel genuinely otherworldly. You'll probably remember these images long after you forget the plot. The movie presents Satan as a cosmic infection rather than the traditional villain. This thing doesn't want to rule hell. It wants to bring its father through from the antimatter realm and turn our entire universe into a place where physics work backwards and suffering is the only constant. The climax involves one character sacrificing herself to prevent this cosmic takeover, but the ending suggests that the evil might have won anyways. But of course, some cosmic horror, and often the best, lives underwater. Underwater starts 7 miles below the ocean surface and immediately ruins everyone's day. Kristen Stewart plays a mechanical engineer on a deep sea drilling station when a massive earthquake hits and destroys most of the facility. The survivors have to walk across the ocean floor to reach escape pods, which sounds terrible enough without adding monsters to the situation. At first, this feels like a standard disaster movie. Equipment failures, oxygen running low, that claustrophobic feeling you get when you realize there's literally nowhere to run. The ocean floor is pitch black. The water pressure will kill you instantly if your suit breaks, and rescue is impossible at this depth. You know, typical average problems. Then strange noises start echoing through the water. Something's moving out there in the darkness. Something big enough to damage drilling equipment and fast enough to catch humans in bulky diving suits. The crew gets attacked by these pale, spindly creatures that look like someone crossed a human with a deep sea fish and forgot to add any semblance of looking cute. These monsters pick off the team one by one, but they're just the opening act. The real reveal comes when Stewart's character sees what's been living at the bottom of the ocean all along. The drilling operation didn't just hit a geological fault. It woke up something that's been sleeping down there for thousands of years. We're talking about a creature so massive it makes Godzilla look small, a tentacled nightmare covered in what might be eyes or mouths or both, rising from the ocean floor with the slow inevitability of natural disaster. The movie never calls it Cthulhu, but the director basically confirmed that's what they were going for. Stewart realizes the only way to stop this thing from reaching the surface and discovering that humans exist is to overload the station's nuclear reactor. She sacrifices herself to blow up what might be an actual elder god, which is either the most heroic act in cinema or the most pointless, depending on whether you think nuclear weapons work on cosmic entities. At least that was a quick and merciful death though for her. DAGON takes its time making you uncomfortable, which is somehow worse than just getting eaten by a sea monster. This Spanish-made film adapts Lovecraft's The Shadow over Innsmouth and commits completely to the idea that fish people are inherently disturbing, especially when they used to be your neighbors. Paul and Barbara are vacationing off the Spanish coast when a storm wrecks their boat and forces them to seek shelter in the fishing village of Imbica. The locals are unfriendly, which isn't unusual for small towns dealing with annoying tourists. What is unusual is how they all have these bulging eyes and webbed fingers, and the way they keep muttering prayers to something called Dagon. The town has been interbreeding with sea creatures for generations. They getting freaky with the fish, and the results are not what you call family friendly. Some villagers still look mostly human, just with a few extra gills or scales, but others have progressed to the point where they're more fish than person, flopping around town and probably making the property values plummet. Paul spends most of the movie running through narrow alleyways while fish people chase him, chanting "La la Dagon," which sounds impressive until you realize they're basically just yelling their god's name over and over. The pursuing mob includes a grandmother who's essentially become a blob of fish flesh in a wheelchair, which raises questions about the village's fishy healthcare system. Is there fishy healthcare insurance? Do they have political fishy problems? Is there a political fishy president? I don't know. The film's most infamous scene involves someone getting skinned alive on a butcher's table because Stuart Gordon never met a practical effect he couldn't make more disturbing. The sequence is so extreme it borders on comedy, but somehow manages to stay genuinely horrifying through sheer commitment to being gross. The twist ending reveals that Paul isn't just a random tourist. He's actually from Imbica originally, adopted as a baby and destined to mate with Uxia, a beautiful woman who happens to have tentacles under her dress. Now, I know some of you are getting excited, but just calm down. It's just a movie, it's not real. Anyways, Paul learns he belongs to the very nightmare he's been trying to escape, which is classic cosmic horror irony. He ends up embracing his fishy destiny and diving into the ocean to live with Dagon forever. Because sometimes you just have to accept that your family reunions are gonna be a little weird. Now, what if cosmic horror was just light? Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse proves that sometimes the scariest cosmic horror comes in black and white with fancy dialogue that makes you feel like you're watching Shakespeare. You know, if Shakespeare was really into Fortnite. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson play lighthouse keepers stuck on a tiny rock island in the 1890s, slowly going insane from isolation and whatever they're drinking, which definitely isn't regulation lighthouse keeper juice. Dafoe's character guards the lighthouse beacon jealously, spending his nights up there alone while Pattinson does all the grunt work and gradually loses his mind. This isn't your typical cosmic horror with tentacles and gore. The horror here comes from not knowing what's real and what's just two guys going crazy from being stuck together too long. Pattinson sees a mermaid that might be beautiful or horrifying depending on the lighting. Dafoe might actually be Poseidon, or he might just be a drunk old sailor who talks too much about Fortnite. The seagulls on the island seem to have it out for Pattinson personally, which sounds ridiculous until you watch the movie and start agreeing with him that these birds are definitely plotting something. Dafoe warns him that seagulls carry the souls of dead sailors, which is either maritime folklore or a very specific threat. Everything builds towards Pattinson finally getting access to the lighthouse beacon that Dafoe has been hoarding. When he finally looks into the light, it destroys him completely. The film shows him as a blast of cosmic energy that breaks his mind and body, referencing the Prometheus myth about stealing fire from the gods. The ending leaves you wondering whether they encountered actual sea gods and cosmic forces, or if two isolated men just drove each other insane with cabin fever and maritime superstitions. Either way, Pattinson ends up dead on the rocks being eaten by seagulls, which is probably not how he imagined his career going after Twilight.
You better hold on tight, spider monkey.
The Lighthouse works as cosmic horror because it suggests that forbidden knowledge doesn't have to come from space aliens or ancient books. Sometimes it's just a light that human beings aren't meant to see, and the universe will punish you for looking anyways. Sleep well knowing that. If If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. Also, YouTube just released the hype feature, which allows you to gift hype points to your favorite creators for free, which helps smaller creators like me get our videos seen by more people. It's one of the best ways you can support your favorite creators. So if you wanted to give some hype points to this video, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you're not ready for bed yet and want to watch another one of my videos, you can click the video on screen now.